This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
The millennial entrepreneur and speaker who is cleaning up, Kristen Hadeed, on this edition of Conversations. What fashionable college student doesn't want an expensive pair of designer jeans and have their parents pay for them? When Kristen Hadeed's mom and dad shot that idea down, it turned out to be her lucky break. Hadeed's desire for overpriced blue jeans led her to earning a few extra bucks cleaning houses. But the entrepreneurial spirit runs deep in Hadeed. Her part-time cleaning job would lead to her launching Student Maid, a cleaning company that at peak times employs up to 500 people. The unique twist of Student Maid is that it mostly employs college students with a 3.5 or better grade point averages. In addition to running Student Maid, Hadeed has become a sought-after speaker and consultant. She is also helping bring more technology into the services industry with her startup Maid Suite. We're pleased to have Kristen Hadeed on this edition of Conversations. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
What a fascinating story. So here you are, University of Florida, finance major, thinking about Wall Street, end up owning a cleaning company. Tell me more.
Yes, so I was a junior at the University of Florida. Didn't have a job because my classes were really tough. And I went to the mall one day, fell in love with a pair of jeans. They were $99 plus tax. And asked my parents to pay for them, knowing they would say no. And of course they said, no way, get a job. But I think as a kid, I was always very entrepreneurial. I had lemonade stands, I had a babysitter's club, and it's weird because no one in my family really is an entrepreneur. But when my parents said, get a job to buy these jeans, we're not paying for them, my initial thought was, how can I make this money on my own versus going out and applying for a job? So I put an ad on Craigslist to clean one house. And the subject of the ad literally said, I will clean your house for $99 plus tax. Someone called, and I cleaned her house. And I thought that was the end of the story. You know, I was in college and never thought a cleaning company would be something I would ever want to be a part of. Investment banking was definitely the thing I wanted to do. But this woman called and asked if I would clean her house every week. And then she told her friends about me, and before I knew it, I was cleaning 3 or 4 houses a day, and I had to hire a few friends to help. And then right before my senior year, we got a contract to clean thousands of empty apartments. And that's when the turning point really happened, and decided, okay, this is a company that I could grow and maybe do well with. And so that I was 21 when that happened.
Okay. So you graduate college and you say, okay, do I go work in finance or do I keep going with this? So what was the turning point? What made you stay with the business as opposed to?
Good question. So the summer before my senior year is when we got this contract. And even then, I wasn't thinking this is going to be my career. I just looked at it as a really short-term thing. I could hire a bunch of students to clean these empty apartments, and then it would be over. But we did really well, and the students really loved the job. So I wanted to keep growing the company, and I did that throughout my senior year. I almost had to drop out of school because it was just so much work. And when I got offered that dream job that I always thought I wanted, it just wasn't exciting to me, you know, and it was New York, investment banking, 6-figure salary, the thing that you hope you get when you graduate. But I was just so excited about this cleaning company. And I turned the job down, and everyone except for my family, they thought it was nuts. They couldn't understand why I turned it down.
Did you think you were nuts for a little while?
I didn't think I learned that it's so important to follow what makes you excited. And I just wasn't excited about that job. But I did hope that I made the right choice, you know, and it became very clear that I did, because I just loved the work that I was doing, and it didn't feel like work. And at the beginning, I wasn't even really making money, because when you start a company, you have to put everything back into the company.
What was the biggest challenge you faced from going from basically Craigslist to a legitimate company?
Leadership. I mean, you don't learn that in your classes. You don't know how to be a leader. And I struggled with that. I hired, my first summer with that contract, I hired 60 students. They were all my peers and my age. And I didn't know how to separate myself from them as a leader. And I failed tremendously. That first summer, 45 of the 60 quit. Wow. And I was able to get them all back, and we finished that summer, and everything was great, but I had to learn, that being a leader is a responsibility to do more. It's not a privilege to do less. And I thought that leadership meant sitting back and watching everyone else do the work, but that's not what it is. And I failed a lot.
What made you change?
Well, when those 45 people quit, it made me reflect. And it wasn't that I was a bad person. It's just I really thought that when you are the boss, you sit and everyone does the work. That's what I always thought a boss did. Right. But that turning point made me realize that leadership is so much more than that. And your employees have to know that you will do anything that they'll do, that you will be there when they start, when they end, that you're going to make sure they feel important and valued. And it was that summer that I realized I wasn't doing any of those things. And so I changed my behavior, and I got there before everyone arrived, and I was the last person to leave, and I helped them do the work, and I believed in them, and I made sure they knew they were valued, and that's when I saw the significant improvement, and I just kept trying to become a better leader.
You just created a new culture.
Right.
Yeah. You're a young person with not a lot of experience. How did you have the wherewithal to be that self-aware to do that? What triggered that?
Well, I think growing up, failure was a very comfortable thing in our home. My parents really encouraged us to fail. They cared about us and loved us, but they didn't keep us in a safety bubble. And when we failed, we had to get back up. We had to talk about it. We had to say how we were going to get through this failure. So when these people quit, my thought was not, okay, I need to give up. It was, this is a failure, and I have failed before, and I just need to talk about what I've learned and figure out how I'm going to get through this, just like I have in the past. And I've had that mentality this whole journey. I'm going to fail, I'm going to mess up, but every time I do, I learn something. And every time I fail, I become better. And then I try to incorporate that lesson that I learned into our culture to teach it to these other young people who unfortunately haven't been taught these things either. And I think that that's, it's not from, of course I have mentors and I read a lot of books, but I learn most when I fail.
What do you think employees want from a leader?
Well, I think that integrity is obvious. They have to feel that they can trust the person that they're working with, and they have to be able to trust that you're leading them in a way you're looking out for their best interests. And that's something, integrity is a value of mine, so that wasn't ever anything that I struggled with. But I don't believe in managing people. I think that each person is an individual, and you have to really learn and try to get to know your employees to figure out, okay, what's going to motivate this person? What causes this person to tick and really become engaged in their job? And that requires taking an approach that is very individualized, and it takes a lot of time. So I think that employees want leaders who take time, and that's the most valuable thing you can give someone.
What are some of the other keys that you think are important when it comes to coaching employees to get the best out of them?
Well, I think in our business it's very unique because we employ millennials. And that's a big topic right now. Millennials, we can't understand them, and I'm a millennial. And by 2020, they're making up half of our workforce. They'll be our customers. And there's this huge gap in the workforce. We can't bridge this gap between the millennial generation and other generations. And I think a big part of this is because when we grew up, we were awarded for everything we did. We were awarded for participating. We got a pizza party when we finished last place. We got a trophy even when we never hit the ball once all season. And so we grew up this way, and now we're entering the real world and we're getting our first jobs, and we realize that we're not all treated the same. It's very individualized. And our whole lives we've been taught, you're special, you can do anything you want. We've been sheltered. Our parents were kind of like helicopters protecting us because they loved us and they wanted us to be successful. But now they're in the real world and they have never really failed before, and they don't know how to handle constructive criticism because they've always been told, you're great, you're special, A+. And in our culture, we really try to reverse these effects. So we give feedback that is very transparent and honest, and at first, they don't know how to react. They cry. They threaten that, they want to quit. They are angry. But once we get through that, once they see that this feedback actually makes them better, actually creates growth and learning, then they welcome this feedback with open arms. And we also create a culture that is pro-failure. And I know that sounds really weird and not very traditional, but if you can create a place where people feel safe and they know that even if they mess up, even if they fail, they don't have to worry about losing his or her job, that is when you really see people go above and beyond, take ownership, and make decisions that sometimes are better than the ones you would have made. And if you can create a place, I don't care if they're millennials or if they're from another generation, I think everyone wants a place where they have ownership and they feel that they can make decisions and not have to worry about losing their job because of a decision they made.
You mentioned millennials, and you're absolutely right. There's so much talk about, well, they're different and their work habits are different. So how does one make that initial bridge, so to speak, over the river to get to the point where you were talking about where they do buy into that way of management?
Right. Well, I think communication is a big problem because it's viewed that millennials, because they're always on their cell phones and they text and they don't really call or leave voicemails, there's this barrier, and I think others believe that we don't want to have a conversation, but the truth is we do. We just don't know how to start the conversation. So we're begging that you will come up to us and say, how are you doing? Is there anything I can help you with? Do you want to talk about it? You know, and there's this belief that we don't want to hear from you. We know it all and we don't need your advice, but we want it. So that's the first thing, is knowing that we do want to hear from you. We just don't know how to start that conversation. And I think something else that is very hard to understand is that we define success very differently from other generations. And we don't care too much about having the corner office or the huge salary. We want to know that we're working on something that matters, that our work every day has some sort of impact somewhere, and we need to know what kind of impact it has. But even more than that, we want to feel like we're working with our friends and family. And we care about our personal lives, and we care about flexibility in our jobs to be able to take time off to visit friends and family. And that is more important to us, and that is success to us. So these companies will, you know, throw all of these benefits in our faces saying, hey, we have this salary and you can have this office. And they're wondering why we're not running for the job. But it's because they haven't given us something to identify with. We don't really have that feeling of I'm making an impact here, and we don't have the flexibility in our job. So at Student Maid, our students choose their own work schedules. They're essentially their own bosses.
And again, that instills more the ownership mentality.
Right.
Huh? So for someone who has been in the corporate world for a long time and they're old and set in their, I hate to use the word old, but they're set in their ways and they're used to working with, you know, folks my age and older, how do they change their mindset to say, okay, to be successful, I have to have these millennials on my side? How do they change that mindset?
Well, the fact is, even if millennials aren't your employees or coworkers, they will be your customers. So it's critical that we bridge this gap. And I think that older generations really need to become mentors, because we want mentorship so badly, but we don't know how to ask for it. And I do a lot of speaking on college campuses, and every time we do a Q&A session, the questions are always, how do I find a mentor? How do I ask someone to be my mentor? So if you can just look at your role as, I'm here to mentor these young people, and understand that the reason that they are this way is because of the way they were raised, and it's not really our fault. You know, we didn't ask to be kept in this safety bubble and have our parents make decisions for us. Right. So how do we reverse this? And if you can view your role as a mentor and as somebody who can really teach, maybe talking about your own failures and talking about what you learned from them, and being brutally transparent and honest about your failures. Because this generation, they don't really know too much about failure because they haven't experienced it. Right. And it's scary to them.
You mentioned something that is very interesting. I know a lot of people will have interest in, is millennials as customers. What does a business do to attract millennial customers? Well,
I think millennials, it goes with whether they're buying a product or hiring a service or working for a company. They really have to identify with the brand. So if they're working with a company, they have to really feel strongly about that brand. If they are buying something, they have to really believe in that brand. And it's the same thing with the impact. They want to know that when they're buying this thing, there is some sort of impact that has. at Student Maid, we clean free for cancer patients. Okay. So, and we do community service. So we attract employees because they know that we give back, but we also attract millennial customers because they know that we're a cleaning service that really gives back. Another great company, Tom's Shoes, they've done this. You know, they've created a place where millennials want to work, and millennials also feel really great about purchasing these shoes because they know it's making an impact. And that's, I would say, giving them something to really connect with, a brand that they can believe in and stand behind, and then they'll be your best customers because they'll tell everyone that, they'll tell their friends, you need to buy this. Listen to what this company does and who they are, and that's you gotta figure out a way. And I don't think it was that way for other generations.
Right.
You know?
So what you're saying is millennials really are loyal. Mm-hmm. People say they're not because they're always tied to iPhones or whatever, but you're saying, no, they really are. You've just got to connect.
Right, right. Yeah. And this instant gratification thing, you know, we've heard, oh, millennials, they have to have it. They have to have it now. Well, that's how our whole lives have been. You know, we want to figure out how to do something. We Google it. We find the answer. We want to watch a movie, we just go online and we log on and we can watch it right then and there. So we've grown up where everything has been instant, and we expect that when we buy something or hire a service that it is instant. So if companies are not doing that, they're not providing that, they've got to figure out a way to adapt, because these millennials, that's how they've grown up and that's how they expect that it continues.
What do you see the future being like for women in business?
I think that's I don't actually believe that my gender has ever been an obstacle. And maybe it's because I've chosen to never see it that way. But I think for me, my age has always been the thing that's been the hardest to overcome, because I've had to work really hard to prove myself, you know, walking into these meetings as the youngest person. And in order to do that, I've had to really work on my own professional development and really force myself outside of my comfort zone. And I think that, especially when I do speaking on college campuses, that is always a question too. You know, how is it being a female? And I think we need to, instead of even asking that question, just totally shift the mindset. I think it's the same. I think the future is what females want the future to be. You know, are they going to step up to the plate and take on these leadership roles and start companies? It's their choice, and there isn't any reason they can't do it.
Well, it seems to me like more and more are.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I guess I really wonder, you know, women are oftentimes credited as being much better communicators than men. They're obviously better at multitasking, which leads to the question, are women better leaders than men?
I don't know. I mean, we have a great mix of female and male leaders, you know. I don't want to be the one to say that.
I'm not going to draw you into that.
But yeah, I think there are strengths on both sides, and I think that women tend to have a better, they're better at connecting emotionally. Right. And there are employees who need that connection.
And maybe the better question would have been, are women's skill sets better suited for leadership, would be in today's world?
Right.
This would be the question.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah. How did you go from being the owner of the cleaning company to speaking and consulting? How did that transition happen?
Well, it started a few years into the company. I was speaking on campus at the University of Florida. And it was to students, and it was about my journey, but mainly about the failures that I had, because I just wanted them to know, look, you're going to mess up and it's okay, because no one ever told me that. And I never read a book that told me that. And after going to the same classes for the same professors every semester, I thought they have got to be sick of hearing my story over and over, because it doesn't change. It always starts the same way. And at that point, I just felt that I really had a bigger purpose, and I saw the impact that my talks were making on these young people. It wasn't like they left the talk inspired to start a company. It was just they learned that it's okay to fail, and they learned how to become successful, you know, in leadership and in these things that we just aren't taught in school. And so I wanted to have a bigger impact. And I started working with a group called Campus Speak, and they're connected to college campuses all over the country. And so I've been working with them for 2 years. And then that kind of catapulted me into the corporate world, because this whole millennial thing is becoming such a big topic right now. And I think that's where I can provide value, because I understand both, and I think I have an ability to bridge the gap between the two. And so a lot of my work is focused on the millennial in the corporate world.
What kind of feedback do you get from the corporate world?
Well, it's funny because when I walk up on stage, I can tell, not everyone, but most of them are like, who is this young millennial, and how, so that's the first problem is we're having a talk about bridging the gap, and I don't even feel welcomed on this stage because you're questioning, am I even, the person who should be telling you this? Right. But then after they hear these things that I say, it becomes almost emotional for two reasons. I think that, number one, they realize, man, I don't understand these people, and I haven't been really leading them in the way that is making a difference and affecting them and engaging them. But number two, it makes you think about parenting. And a lot of these people have kids, and they sit there and realize, I did this to my children. Yeah. What she's saying is true. And so it makes you a little emotional on that end.
Yeah. Interesting. Very fascinating. What are some of the tenets of your business? I heard you speak, and you talk. I want you to tell the audience just some of the key tenets of your business that you feel are important.
Well, we only hire students, and they have to have a 3.5 GPA to work with us. But we hire high school students, we hire college students, graduate students. It doesn't matter as long as they're in school for something. And the GPA is not a hard requirement. If they're a great fit for our culture, but they have a lower GPA, they're absolutely offered a job. Our retention rate is really high compared to the industry. It's about 2.5 years versus the industry is only a few months. And it's funny to think that you can engage a millennial who apparently doesn't want to work, and they're cleaning toilets, and they do this for 2.5 years, and then they have to leave because when they graduate, they can't work with us anymore. Right. We give back to a lot of local nonprofits and volunteer our time. We clean free for cancer patients. But I think that what's so unique is just what's very tough about our business is our leadership team. They are not students. And they have to invest so much in these young people. They have to invest so much time and energy, and then they don't get to see the effects and the benefits of their leadership because the improvements and the growth and the learning happen after they leave Student Maid and they're in their first real job, and then they know that their time at Student Maid made a difference and it made them successful. But we don't get to see that because that's after they've left. And so it takes a really incredible amount of patience to be able to do this over and over and give your time to people who you don't even really get to see the powerful impact that your time has. And it's a special thing. And we have a great leadership team they're so committed to really improving these lives. And that's a big, if you think about it, it's servant leadership. You're serving every day, and you're not seeing or getting anything in return.
Yeah. Tell me, is there a book out there for you?
We're writing a book. It's about leadership, and it's about our story, but it will highlight a lot of the failures that we've had and how we got through them. Because when I started, I felt like something was wrong with me. I kept failing, and I couldn't find a book that told me, hey, this is normal. It seemed like everyone just sugarcoated, hey, I messed up, but then all this great stuff happened, and now I'm here, and I'm super successful. So I felt like something was wrong with me. And I think it's not comfortable to talk about our failures. But if we can learn to do that, it makes everyone feel better and feel like there isn't anything wrong with them. This is normal.
Now, another enterprise you've started is Maid Suite, right? What is that?
Right. So Maid Suite is an app that we designed for cleaning businesses. We had a really big challenge with scheduling because you can imagine all of our employees are in school, we work around their exams, and they aren't the typical 9-to-5 employees, so it's like a jigsaw puzzle of trying to figure it out. And we couldn't find an app that was designed for our industry that really worked. And so we thought, okay, let's just make one. And originally it was just for us. We hired some developers, we worked together for 2 years, we built this app, and then we realized this has helped us so much. It does scheduling, it manages your customers, it really makes it so that you can focus on the important things in your business, and these little things that just take so much time are just automated. And we realized we have to share this with others in our industry. And that's very much our mentality. It's how do we help others? And so we made it a company. We sell it to other cleaning companies. And we're currently working on other applications that are very similar for other service industries.
I've got roughly 3 minutes or so. As you look ahead, just to the world in general, what are you most optimistic about?
I'm really optimistic about our future. I think that we have this new workforce that's coming in. They're so talented, and they are. I mean, the level of talent, it just blows your mind. But they just haven't had anyone unleash the talent. They haven't had anyone show them how to do these things. And I feel like if we can really harness their talent and really empower them and really show them the way, they will be leaders like we have never seen before. They will lead companies in ways that we've never seen before. And that gives me hope. And that's why I do this every day. And I believe in it with all my heart.
You know, it's been my experience, and I told you this before we went on, all the millennials I talk to are very, very smart. They're a lot smarter than my generation, for sure. And so I think it's very fascinating that you're approaching it. It's just a matter of unleashing them, huh?
Right. That's what I think.
Well, I think you're probably right. What advice would you have for parents as they start to, you know, as they're raising their kids, especially as they get older into high school and into college? What advice would you give?
My best advice would be just let us fall down and let us get up by ourselves. And as hard as that is to watch, it's so much worse if you're standing next to us holding your hand and we reach up and grab your hand, because then we never fall down by ourselves, and then we don't know how to do it. And we don't have confidence because we've never had to get through anything alone. So just let us fall and watch us, and then when we get back up by ourselves, celebrate that.
In about 45 seconds, for Kristen Hadeed, what's the future look like?
Well, I'm really committed to continuing the speaking because I think that now is it's a critical time for both corporate and college, because in a few years, this generation will make up our workforce. So I'm very committed to that. We also want to grow Student Maid locations all over the country and hopefully franchise them to former Student Maid team members.
Awesome. I know you do very, very well. What a pleasure spending some time with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I know you're going to go far.
Thanks.
You're already going far. You're going to go farther. Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Kristen Hadeed. And by the way, you can keep up with Kristen at KristenHadeed.com. And you can see more of our conversations online at WSRE.org/conversations. We're also on YouTube and Facebook. I'm Jeff Weeks. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. Take great care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.
Support for this program is provided in part by these corporate sponsors. And by viewers like you.